Around the world, a quiet revolution is unfolding. From the heart of the Middle East to the bustling cities of Asia and Africa, thousands of Muslims are turning to Jesus Christ. But why is this happening? What are they seeing, hearing, and experiencing that is changing their lives forever? I remember the first time I questioned everything I had been taught. My name is Farid Rahmani. I was born in 1987 in Amman, Jordan, into a devout Muslim family. My father, a respected imam, led one of the oldest mosques in our neighborhood, and my mother ran Quran recitation classes from our home for girls in the community. I memorized surahs before I could even write my name in full. Our lives revolved around prayer times, fasting, and religious obligations. We weren't just Muslims, we were guardians of tradition, protectors of the faith, as my father always said. Yet, beneath that structure, a quiet longing grew in me, one I couldn't explain to anyone, not even myself. I was always drawn to the unseen, the mystery of God. But every time I asked deeper questions, like whether God could hear me personally or if he truly loved me, I was met with silence, or worse, lectures. One time when I was 17, I asked my older brother Yasser if he ever felt like Allah was distant, almost unreachable. He slapped me. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear. He told me never to say such things again, not even in my heart. But I couldn't help it. My heart was restless. I tried harder to earn God's approval. I fasted on Mondays and Thursdays. I volunteered at the mosque. I even tried learning Arabic more deeply so I could read classical tafsir without translation. But still, every night when the lights were off and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, something inside me felt incomplete. I wanted more than just discipline and duty, I wanted closeness, connection, something personal. Years later, I moved to Istanbul for university. It was there that the questions returned with even more force. In a philosophy class, we studied different religious systems. I remember reading excerpts from the Gospel of Matthew during a discussion on comparative religion. I didn't want to pay attention, I even scoffed under my breath, but one sentence stuck with me for weeks. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I didn't understand it, but it felt like something in that sentence had been written just for me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that word, rest. Not obedience. Not striving. Not fear. Just, rest. Was it even possible to rest in faith? In Islam, everything felt like a ladder I had to climb, prayers, rules, rituals, hoping to reach the mercy of Allah. But this Jesus was offering something entirely different. Rest, freely given. I kept it to myself. I wasn't stupid, I knew the risks. In our culture, exploring other faiths wasn't a private matter. It was betrayal. But something had stirred in me, and I couldn't let it go. Over the next few months, I secretly searched online, trying to understand what Christians actually believed. Not what I'd been told they believed, but their real faith, from their own sources. I read more verses from the New Testament and watched testimonies in Arabic from people with stories eerily similar to mine. One night in my dorm room, I prayed, not a memorized prayer, but from my heart. I didn't know what I was doing, but I said, if you are there, if you are listening, if Jesus is more than a prophet, show me. Nothing happened that night. But 3 days later, something strange occurred. I was walking alone on the campus path that led to the library. A man sitting on a bench looked up at me and said in Arabic, "Don't be afraid. God is calling you." I froze. I had never seen him before. When I looked again, he was gone. I tried convincing myself it was a coincidence, or that I had imagined it. But that same night, I had a dream. In it, I was standing in a desert. The sky was dark and I felt utterly lost. Then a man in white approached me, touched my shoulder, and said, "Farid, I have heard your prayer. I have called you by name." I woke up crying. I couldn't explain it, but I knew deep in my bones that Jesus had come to me. I didn't convert right away. I was terrified. For weeks I argued with myself, reread the Quran, called my father more often to hear his voice. But nothing could shake what I had experienced. Over time, the pull of Jesus became stronger than my fear. His words stayed with me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. That sentence, which once offended me, now gave me courage. I eventually met a small group of believers in Istanbul. They met in secret, in a room behind a tea house. We read the Bible together and prayed, not the way I used to, but openly, simply, from the heart. It felt so real, so peaceful, that I didn't care what it would cost me anymore. That year, I gave my life to Jesus. I lost some things. My father stopped speaking to me. My brother blocked me. My mother sent a message saying I had dishonored the family. But I also gained something I had never known before, peace. Not just any peace, but the kind that sits deep inside you even when everything outside is crumbling. My story is not special. It's just one among thousands. Today, I meet people from Iran, Egypt, Pakistan, Nigeria, men and women who were raised just like me, and who encountered the living Christ. Some saw him in dreams. Others heard his voice in moments of desperation. Others, like me, read a simple verse that changed everything. This is not a trend. It is a quiet revolution. And it's growing. And maybe you, watching this now, are where I once was, curious, unsure, searching. Let me tell you something, you are not alone. And if your heart is yearning for something more, I promise you, Jesus hears you. Just speak to him. My journey didn't begin with rebellion. It began with longing. A longing I didn't know how to name at first. Something inside me was missing, like a conversation that had been paused halfway through. For most of my life, I was told that asking too many questions was dangerous. That it showed a lack of faith. But I wasn't trying to disbelieve, I was just hungry. Hungry for something deeper. Something more real. After I became a believer in Istanbul, I started meeting others, quietly, carefully, because safety wasn't guaranteed. One of the first people I met was a young woman named Layla. She was from Shiraz, Iran. We met in a small group through a friend of a friend. Layla wore her hijab loosely and always spoke softly, but behind her eyes, you could see years of pain. She told me her story one evening as we sat on the floor in a dimly lit apartment, sharing tea and whispering so as not to disturb the neighbors. Layla had grown up in a conservative Shia household. Her father was an Ayatollah, and from a young age, she was groomed to be the perfect daughter, obedient, modest, faithful. But Layla had questions. She said that when she was just 14, she had already memorized most of the Quran. Yet, every time she prayed, she felt like she was speaking into an empty sky. She tried harder, woke before dawn, prayed 5 times a day without fail, gave to the poor. But still, she said, I felt like I was doing everything right and getting nothing back. My heart felt dry, like dust. She was afraid to talk to anyone about it. Not even her mother. So she searched in secret. Late at night, after her family had gone to sleep, she would put on her headphones and search for anything spiritual on YouTube. At first, she watched Islamic lectures. Then she came across a video titled, Does God Speak to You Personally? She clicked. It was a testimony from a woman in Egypt who had met Jesus in a dream. Layla said she didn't believe it, but she couldn't stop watching. There was something different in the woman's voice, something warm, peaceful. That night, Layla whispered a prayer she had never prayed before. God, if you are real, if you care about me, show me. Over the next few weeks, she kept returning to those videos. She found one in Farsi, another Iranian woman, crying, talking about finding Jesus in a prison cell. Layla started writing down verses she heard in the videos. She was especially drawn to one from the book of John, My sheep listen to my voice, I know them, and they follow me. She said, for the first time, I felt like God was not a judge watching from above, but a father calling me by name. Then came the turning point. She downloaded a Farsi Bible in PDF format, hidden on her phone under a fake file name. She started reading at night under her blanket with a flashlight. It began as curiosity, but very quickly became obsession. She devoured the Gospels, and the figure of Jesus began to overwhelm her. He wasn't like the Isa of Islam. He wasn't. If there's one thing that crosses every border in the Muslim world, from Morocco to Malaysia, it's the deep reverence for dreams. In our culture, dreams are not dismissed. They are taken seriously. Many believe that through dreams, the divine speaks. And while scholars may debate the meaning of them, everyone knows a dream can carry power. It can shift a heart. It can change a life. I say this because I've seen it happen again and again. It started with my own dream, the one I told you about earlier, standing in a desert, lost, until a man in white touched my shoulder and said my name. But I thought maybe I was an exception. Maybe it was just my mind trying to make sense of everything I had been reading and thinking. Then I met others. Dozens. Each with different stories, and yet, one strange thread connecting us: Jesus came to us in a dream. One of the first people to tell me a story like this was Mahmoud, a tall, quiet man from Algeria. He worked in a cafe in Istanbul and came to our prayer group through a Turkish believer named Cenk. Mahmoud rarely spoke, but when he did, it was with a kind of weight, like every word had been pressed through fire before reaching his lips. He had been raised in a small village in the Kabylie region. Berber by background, Muslim by identity, though not overly religious. He said that after his mother died, something in him broke. She was the only person who loved me without judgment, he said. He started wandering, drifting between jobs, drinking more than he should, falling into anger he couldn't explain. Then, one night, he had a dream. He described it with such simplicity that it gave me chills. He was standing at the edge of a cliff, and the ground beneath him began to crumble. Below was only darkness. But just as he started to fall, a bright light appeared, not like the sun, not like a lamp, but something pure. From the light, a man stepped forward and reached out his hand. He didn't say anything, Mahmoud told me. But I felt what he meant. That I was not meant to fall. That he had come for me. He woke up in tears. And that light, that presence, never left him. He didn't even know who it was until weeks later, when he passed by a small bookstore in Algiers and saw a Bible on display behind the glass. It was rare to see such a thing. He went inside and asked the shopkeeper if he could read it. The man nodded, handed him a French Bible, and said, "Start with the Gospels." Mahmoud turned to the book of John. When he reached the verse where Jesus says, "I am the light of the world," he closed the book and whispered, "It was you." He told me it was like puzzle pieces falling into place. The man in his dream, the feeling of being rescued, the light, he wasn't just a dream figure. He was real. And he had come to save him. Another story that still echoes in my mind is from a woman named Amina, originally from Lahore, Pakistan. She had a gentle spirit, always covering her head with a scarf, even among us. She never wanted to seem dishonorable. Amina had been married at 17 to a much older man, and for the next 10 years, lived under heavy religious expectation. She prayed, fasted, raised her 2 children with care. But her marriage was cold, and her heart was lonely. One night, after her husband had beaten her during an argument, she lay on the floor of her kitchen, weeping silently. She said she wasn't praying, not really. Just aching. She repeated again and again, "God, if you see me, help me. Please help me." That night, she had her dream. She described it as standing inside a vast garden. Everything was alive, more alive than anything she had seen on earth. In the center of the garden stood a man wearing white. He had scars in his hands. And his eyes, she couldn't stop describing his eyes. They looked into me, she said. Not at me. Into me. And in that look, I felt worth for the first time in my life. He said only one sentence, "You are mine. I have not forgotten you." She woke up gasping. For days she walked around her house like she was somewhere else, lost in that voice. She didn't know who he was at first. But she told a cousin who had moved to Canada years earlier. Her cousin, who had become a Christian in secret, said, "Amina, that was Jesus." It took her 2 years to come to faith. She feared for her children. But she couldn't deny what she had seen, what she had felt. And when she finally whispered, "Jesus, I believe you are Lord," she said a peace settled on her like a warm blanket. Every dream I've heard has a different setting, different symbols, but they all carry the same elements: light, peace, love, and a presence so real, no one ever forgets it. In Damascus, I met Karim, a former seminary student from a strict Sunni background. He told me that he saw a blinding light in his room while he was awake, not dreaming. And in that light stood a man with a wound in his side. Karim shouted in fear, but the man said, "Do not be afraid. I am the one you've been reading about." Karim said it was like time stopped. He wasn't breathing, but he wasn't dying either. Just suspended in something holy. When the vision faded, he grabbed his Quran, confused, angry, shaken. But nothing in it gave him peace. Eventually, he found a gospel hidden in the back of a Christian bookstore. And when he read it, he said, "It was like I already knew the story, like he had written it in my soul beforehand." These stories are not rare. They're not fables. They come from men and women I've prayed with, wept with, broken bread with. They come from people who never asked for visions, who weren't searching for another religion. But Jesus came anyway. He came in light. He came in peace. He came in love that can't be explained by reason alone. And for those who saw him, whether in a dream, a vision, or in the stillness of their room, everything changed. Because when Jesus reveals himself, he doesn't just offer truth. He offers himself. And that is more than enough. When I first began to understand who Jesus really was, what struck me more than his teachings, more than the miracles, even more than the cross, was his love. Not just love as an idea, or as a rule we should follow. But love as a person. Love that looked you in the eye. Love that touched the untouchable. Love that stayed with the broken until they were whole. For much of my life, I obeyed because I was afraid. Afraid of falling short. Afraid of judgment. Afraid that no matter how many prayers I said or how many fasts I completed, I would never be good enough. Islam, as I was taught, was about submission. You submitted, you followed, and you hoped that maybe, in the end, Allah would be merciful enough to forgive you. But with Jesus, it was different. It wasn't about doing enough. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being known, and still loved. I remember the first time I read the passage in the Gospel of John where Jesus calls himself the Good Shepherd. "I know my sheep and my sheep know me. I lay down my life for the sheep." That verse shattered me. Because for the first time, I saw God not as a distant ruler, but as someone who would lay down his life to protect mine. One man who helped me grasp this more deeply was Rafiq, from Cairo. He had been part of a conservative Salafi group in his youth. When I met him, he was in his early 30s, working as a translator for a Christian ministry, something he never imagined doing 10 years earlier. Rafiq told me that as a teenager, he feared God constantly. He described how every small mistake felt like a mountain on his back. If he missed a prayer time by even a few minutes, guilt would consume him. "I used to repeat wudu multiple times," he said, "because I thought maybe I didn't do it perfectly the first time. Maybe God would reject my prayer because of it." He tried to be the best Muslim he could be. But with every year, the burden grew heavier. He was exhausted. And the more he studied theology, the more he feared judgment. Not just for himself, but for everyone around him. Then, one night, while browsing English forums to improve his language skills, he stumbled upon a comment on a discussion thread. It was simple. Just one sentence: "You don't have to earn God's love, He gave it freely on the cross." At first, he laughed. What kind of God dies, he asked himself. What kind of love bleeds? But the words haunted him. They followed him into his sleep. And over the next several months, he kept searching. Slowly, carefully. And the more he read about Jesus, the more he saw something he never found in the religion of his youth: love without condition. He described it to me like this: I realized I had spent my whole life trying to make God love me, while Jesus had already proven that he did. Rafiq eventually gave his life to Jesus. And the transformation was remarkable, not just spiritually, but emotionally. He told me that for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of death. That the voice in his head that used to say, "You're never enough," had finally gone silent. And he wasn't the only one. I remember a woman named Sana, originally from Beirut. Her story is one I carry with me often. She had been through a painful childhood, raised in a home where obedience was demanded, but love was rare. Her father, a respected religious scholar, never once told her she was loved. Correction came quickly. Affection never came at all. She told me that by the time she was 20, she had mastered the outward signs of piety. But inside, she felt nothing. She wore the hijab. She volunteered at the mosque. She fasted every Monday and Thursday, like the Prophet recommended. But her heart felt cold. She said it felt like God was watching her, but never with kindness. Then she met a Christian Lebanese woman named Mireille at a university event. Mireille didn't try to convert her. She simply listened. Week after week, Sana would visit her for tea, and they would talk. Over time, Mireille shared small parts of her faith, verses from the Bible, stories about Jesus. Sana didn't reject them. She was curious. The turning point came when Mireille shared the story of the woman caught in adultery. How the religious leaders wanted to stone her, but Jesus simply said, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone." And one by one, they walked away. Sana said she felt like that woman. Shamed. Exposed. But Jesus didn't shame her. He covered her. Protected her. Loved her. She wept for hours that day. She said, "I didn't know a God like that existed." What followed was a slow journey of healing. Sana struggled to believe that she could be loved, not just accepted, but cherished. It took time, but the more she read the Gospels, the more she saw a pattern: Jesus always moved toward the hurting. He always reached for the broken. And he never turned away the ones others had rejected. She told me, "Jesus didn't just change my religion. He healed my soul." Today, Sana counsels other women from Muslim backgrounds, women who carry deep wounds, not only from culture, but from trying for years to be enough. And she tells them the same thing Mireille told her: "You are already loved. You are already known. And Jesus is not waiting for you to be perfect. He's waiting for you to come home." That is the difference between fear and love. In fear, we perform, hoping for mercy. In love, we rest, knowing mercy already found us. When I think about all the stories I've heard, Rafiq's release from anxiety, Sana's healing from shame, Layla's sense of worth, Tariq's new identity, I realize something powerful: religion without love is just noise. But Jesus doesn't ask us to perform for his affection. He gives it freely. Then, out of that love, we are changed. He is not a distant ruler on a throne of judgment. He is the good shepherd, who knows his sheep by name. Who lays down his life for them. Who leaves the 99 just to find the one. And when you've spent your life trying to earn what can never be earned, being found like that, loved like that, will undo you in the best way possible. Because perfect love really does cast out fear. And in Jesus, that love has a name. They told me to leave. My own brothers. One held my shoulder tightly, and the other just stared. My mother wouldn't even look me in the eyes. "You're not part of this family anymore," she whispered, her voice shaking, not with sorrow, but with rage. I didn't cry right then. I stood quietly, the door behind me slowly closing, cutting me off from the only life I had known for 27 years. My name is Hassan, and I was born in the southern region of Iraq, in the city of Nasiriyah. I was raised a devout Muslim. 5 prayers a day, fasting during Ramadan, memorizing verses from the Quran since childhood. I had always believed that my identity, my honor, my place in this world, was deeply tied to Islam and my family's approval. But everything changed the day I met Samir. He was a quiet man from the north, working with us in the warehouse. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was always about grace. Peace. Forgiveness. It puzzled me. He once whispered, while stacking crates, "Hassan, do you ever feel like something's missing?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He saw it in my eyes. Months later, after my curiosity got the best of me, I met him at his cousin's home late one night. There were 3 of us. They turned off the lights, drew the curtains, and pulled out a small, tattered book wrapped in cloth, an Arabic New Testament. I felt like I was staring at something forbidden, like the very act of seeing it would condemn me. But my hands trembled when I touched it. Samir read a verse aloud, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That night, something broke inside me. Not in a bad way. It was as if someone had finally acknowledged the invisible weight I'd been dragging my whole life. The next few months were filled with secret meetings, long nights of reading, and questions I had never dared to ask before. And eventually, I prayed to Jesus. Quietly, trembling, in the darkness of a small room. And then everything changed. Not just in my heart, but in my world. When word reached my uncle, who was also the local imam, I was summoned to his house. I was questioned, slapped, insulted. I denied it. I lied. I told them it was a misunderstanding. But my eyes betrayed me. The fear, the wonder, the joy, it was too new, too obvious. A week later, my cousin confronted me at the market. He spat at me. Another uncle came to my home and told my father. That's when the threat started. My father turned cold. My mother wept for days. They blamed Samir. They blamed the West. They blamed the internet. But I had already made my choice. They gave me 3 days to leave. No money. No support. Just a warning, if I ever tried to come back, I would regret it. So I left. I found shelter with other believers, people like me, ex-Muslims who had found Jesus and paid the price. We met underground, in basements, in the back rooms of closed shops. We didn't sing loudly. We didn't post pictures. Our baptisms were in buckets, our communion in whispers. One night, I was baptized in a small courtyard under the stars. We had no priest, just a brother who had been following Christ a few years longer. When I came out of the water, I felt something I can't explain. Not fear. Not sadness. It was worth everything I had lost. I know others who paid more. My friend Layla was locked in her room for weeks when her father found a Bible on her phone. They cut her off from the outside world. But she escaped and now helps run a shelter for girls like her. Another brother, Adil, was caught in Libya. He was imprisoned for 6 months, interrogated, beaten, starved. They demanded he renounce Jesus. He never did. What keeps us going? It's not just faith. It's not just a community. It's the person of Jesus himself. He never promised safety. But he promised to be there. And he's never left us. Even now, years later, I still miss my mother's voice. I still remember the smell of my father's room, the way my little sister used to call me, Bakoya. But Jesus gave me a new family. A bigger one. A deeper one. One not built on fear or bloodlines, but on love. And we're growing. Quietly. Steadily. In cities and villages. In hidden rooms and refugee camps. In every country across this region. You might not hear about us on the news. But we're here. And we're not turning back. Because Jesus is worth it all. I never thought what started in my small room in Khartoum, Sudan, hidden behind a locked door, my eyes glued to a flickering screen as I watched a video about Jesus, was just one echo in something much bigger than me. It was only much later that I realized my story wasn't isolated. In fact, I was part of a growing wave of people across the globe waking up to something different, something new, something true. After I accepted Christ, I began searching for others like me, quietly hoping I wasn't alone. That's when I stumbled upon a private Facebook group run by a woman named Rina, a former Muslim from Jakarta, Indonesia. She shared how she had seen a man in white in a dream, who touched her shoulder and said, "Follow me." She, too, had found herself overwhelmed with a peace that lingered even after she woke up. When she told her family, she was locked in her room for days, her phone confiscated, and yet she refused to recant. Her courage stunned me. She said there were dozens in her neighborhood, young people like her, who were now meeting in secret to read the Bible through a WhatsApp group. I couldn't believe it. In her words, we used to think we were isolated. But now, we know. We are part of a family that stretches across the world. I met Bashir through an encrypted messaging app. He was from Tehran, Iran, and his story shook me. Bashir had been a devout Shia Muslim, studying to become a cleric. He had memorized large portions of the Quran, and his life was destined for religious leadership. But late one night, a satellite TV program caught his attention. A former mullah was sharing how he had left everything to follow Jesus. That night, Bashir prayed for the first time not in Arabic, but from his heart. The next night, he had a dream. The third night, he opened an online Bible and read John chapter 1. He told me, when I read that the Word became flesh, I cried like a child. I knew I had found him. Now Bashir leads an underground fellowship with over 30 believers. They baptize people in bathtubs, whispering worship songs as neighbors sleep next door. These stories weren't just online. They were everywhere. Rafiq from Algeria started a YouTube channel where he teaches the Bible in Arabic, disguised as a history lecture. His videos reach thousands every week. He told me his most watched episode is about the Sermon on the Mount. They're hungry for truth, he said. And love. They've never heard anything like what Jesus said, "Bless those who curse you." Rafiq used to fear for his life. Now, he says, "I'd rather die for truth than live a lie." I even connected with a Nigerian woman named Zara, who had fled from Maiduguri after her family discovered she had become a Christian. She now lives in a Christian safe house with others like her, former Muslims who lost everything. She coordinates online Bible studies using code words and emojis to avoid detection. What struck me most was her joy. She said, "We are seeing a revival. Not in buildings, but in hearts. Not with microphones, but with whispers." And it was true. It was everywhere. I started attending a virtual church hosted by a man named Thomas from Lebanon. Every Sunday, over 300 people log in from restricted countries, people from Syria, Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, even Saudi Arabia. They mute their microphones, keep their cameras off, and yet they lift their hands in worship. I wept the first time I joined. Not because it was elaborate or perfect. But because it was real. This was the church. The body of Christ, scarred, brave, hidden, but alive and thriving. Even here in Nairobi, I began to see it more clearly. I met Daniel, a taxi driver who played worship music softly in his car. He once told me, "I've taken many Muslims to churches in secret. They sit quietly in the back, afraid, but hungry. He wasn't a preacher or an evangelist, just a man with a willing heart and open ears. You wouldn't see any of this on the news. You won't find it on mainstream platforms. But it's happening. In refugee camps, in cramped apartments, in mosque-turned homes, in the heart of bustling markets and quiet deserts, people are meeting Jesus. This isn't a trend. It's a movement. It's not organized or loud. But it's deep. It's spreading not with weapons or arguments, but through dreams, through love, through truth that cuts to the heart. And as I listened to all their stories, from Algeria to Indonesia, from Iran to Nigeria, I realized something I will never forget: Jesus is on the move. Quietly. Powerfully. All across the world. When I first gave my life to Jesus, I didn't know how much would change inside me. Not immediately. Not all at once. But over time, I found a peace that I had never known before. My name is Tariq. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan. I used to think religion was about rules and making sure I didn't mess up. Every mistake brought guilt. Every missed prayer brought fear. But when I read the words of Jesus, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest," it was like someone had read my heart out loud. For the first time, I wasn't trying to earn love, I had received it. Jesus, to me, is not just a prophet. He is my friend. My Savior. My comfort in the middle of the night when everything feels too heavy. I used to be someone filled with rage. My marriage was on the edge of collapse. I couldn't speak kindly to my wife, Sarah, even when she pleaded with me. After meeting Jesus, something inside me softened. I learned to ask for forgiveness. To listen. To love. And somehow, we found our way back to each other. Today, we sit down at night, open the Bible together, and pray with our children. That never would have happened before. My name is Layla. I'm originally from Casablanca. My journey started during university when I found an old Bible someone had left in the library. I wasn't looking for it, but I was searching. Searching for truth that felt real and alive. I remember reading John 3 verse 16, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his only Son," and something clicked. I wasn't just one more person in a sea of people. I was loved. Seen. Worth saving. That moment broke me. I cried like a child. It wasn't easy. My parents didn't speak to me for over a year after I told them. But Jesus stayed. He never left. In my loneliness, he became my closest companion. I would whisper prayers at night, hiding under my blanket so no one in my hostel would hear. I didn't know everything about theology, but I knew that I loved him, and I couldn't go back. For many of us, Jesus became the answer we weren't expecting but desperately needed. Sammy, from Turkey, had struggled with panic attacks for years. Doctors said it was anxiety. He tried everything: meditation, therapy, religious rituals, but nothing worked. After he gave his life to Christ, something changed. "I sleep through the night now," he said. "I don't feel like I'm running anymore." Jesus gave me peace. Amina, a young woman from Sudan, spoke softly when she shared, "In Islam, I felt I was always trying to be enough. With Jesus, I already am enough because he was enough for me." Those words carry weight. You can't fake that kind of healing. The change is inward first: hearts mended, burdens lifted, shame undone. But then it flows outward. Families restored. Addictions broken. Joy where there used to be dread. There's a verse, Galatians 2 verse 20, that says, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." That's not just scripture on paper. That's our reality. We were once far from hope. Now we walk with the one who is hope itself. And the best part? We're not alone. Every week we meet online, on Zoom calls, encrypted apps, secret Facebook groups, reading the Word together, praying together, singing softly in different languages. It's not about the language. It's about the presence of Jesus, right there, in every little corner of our lives. So when people ask us, "Who is Jesus to you?" we don't answer with titles or roles. We say, "He's everything."
I want to thank you for staying with us through these stories. What you've heard, these testimonies from people like Layla, Tariq, Rama, Yasser, and Mariam, they are not isolated. These aren't rare, once-in-a-lifetime miracles that happen to a few lucky people in hidden corners of the world. No. These stories are multiplying every day. Every hour. All over the world, from the deserts of Sudan to the suburbs of Paris, from refugee camps in Turkey to university dorm rooms in Jakarta. Something is stirring in the hearts of men and women who have grown up in the traditions of Islam, and maybe you're watching this because something inside of you is stirring too. Maybe you felt that same ache. That same longing to know God, not just follow rules. Maybe your prayers have started to feel empty, and your heart, though disciplined, still feels distant from the one it seeks. Maybe you've asked questions no one could answer. Or maybe, like many of the people we've heard from, you've already begun to see glimpses, dreams, feelings, moments you can't quite explain. Friend, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And this moment right here might be your invitation. Jesus is not just a prophet for Christians. He's not the founder of a religion for the West. He is the Savior of the world. He is for everyone, every tribe, every tongue, every nation. He is for you. And more than anything, he desires a relationship with you. He doesn't want your fear. He wants your heart. He is not standing over you with judgment. He is knocking at the door, waiting for you to open it. I know you may have questions. You might be afraid. But let me say this, every single person who chose to follow Jesus faced fear. Yet every single one of them would tell you, it was worth it. More than worth it. Because the moment they met him, truly met him, they experienced peace they never knew before. Love they never thought possible. Hope that didn't depend on circumstances. If you want to know more about Jesus, if something inside you is curious or restless or even desperate, click the links in the description below. There are resources that will help you understand who Jesus is. There are people who would love to talk with you, answer your questions, and pray with you, privately and safely. And please, share this video with someone you know needs hope. Someone who's searching, silently. Someone who's ready. And don't forget to subscribe to Mysterious Uplift for more true stories of transformation and truth from around the world. Your story might be next.